So today we're going to deconstruct this really fascinating political column from Pakistan. Now, on the surface, it looks like it's just a forecast for the year 2026. But if you know how to read between the lines, well, it reveals something way more interesting. Let's get into it. Right out of the gate, the analysis of this piece just drops this bombshell. And you have to understand, this right here, this is the key that unlocks the whole thing. What we're reading wasn't actually written for you and me. Nope. It's a message sent from one powerful group to another, using a public newspaper as, the mailman. And that, right there, is the big mystery we're going to try to solve together. I mean, if this whole thing is a coded message, our job is to crack that code. So, what's the warning? Who is it for? And maybe most importantly, why send it now? Let's figure it out. Okay, so let's start by peeling back that first layer. We've got to ignore all the fancy journalistic wrapping paper and get straight to the real message, the brutally simple hidden point at the very heart of this column. And there you have it. That's it. This is the simple, hard truth the whole article is built on. The economy is in trouble, the government standing is shaky, and when those two things collide, the system needs a fall guy. Everything else in the column is just noise, just window dressing, built around this one core warning. So how in the world do you send these signals in plain sight? Well, this is where it gets really clever. It's all about learning a specific kind of language, a set of code phrases that are the key to understanding what's really being said. You've seen these phrases a million times. They look like totally normal, kind of boring journalist speak, the kind of stuff you'd just skim right past. But in the world of Pakistani politics, they mean something very specific. They're the wink, the nod that tells the insider, hey, pay attention. This isn't just an opinion. This is a sanctioned leak from the top. And here's a little cheat sheet of how it works. When you read chatter in Islamabad, you should translate that in your head to the powerful are deliberately leaking this information. If you see, if reports are to be believed, that's code for this leak has been officially approved. And my favorite, some feel, isn't vague at all. It means a very specific, very powerful group is making its position known. It's like learning a whole new language. So why now? What kicked this whole thing off? Well, the trigger was a serving lieutenant general who went public and admitted there were serious economic problems. And this just perfectly captures a key rule of the game. The economic facts don't really matter until somebody with real power says they matter. That general's admission was more powerful than a dozen reports from economists. He basically confirmed there's no growth plan, the finances are a total mess, and the tax system is just broken. But the most important signal he sent was that last one. He made it safe to talk about failure out in the open. He basically gave everyone the green light to start this exact conversation. Okay, so we can now read the code, and we know why this whole conversation is even happening. So let's put that knowledge to work and figure out what these signals are actually about. And it boils down to two things: a crisis of legitimacy and the hunt for a scapegoat. This line, just kind of tucked away in the column, is wow. It's an absolutely stunning admission. It's the system itself openly saying, hey, we know we don't have the moral authority that comes from a real election. It's basically a confession that their right to be in charge is standing on very shaky ground. And that leads to this really dangerous new formula for survival. If you don't have legitimacy from an election, the only other way you can get it is by making people's lives better, economically. But what happens when you can't do that either? Well, that's when you get instability, and instability always demands a sacrifice. And you can see all the other players are already maneuvering to save themselves. The talks with the opposition, that's not about making peace, it's insurance, so they can say, hey, we tried, when it all goes south. And the government's allies, when they give speeches about sharing the burden, they're not being noble, they're just creating distance from the failure so they can stay relevant when the dust settles. And all of this reveals the classic playbook for how you target someone for removal. In fact, this newspaper column we're talking about is step 2 in the process. It always follows the same script. First, anonymous rumors pop up. Then, journalists who are close to the powerful start to voice concerns. Next come the personal attacks. And all of that is just to prepare the ground for getting someone fired. This column is a flashing red light that the economic team is the target.
So we know a scapegoat is coming. But what's the end game here? What happens after that? Let's peel back that final layer and look at the one fundamental problem that a column like this, a product of the system, can never, ever admit out loud.
When you really boil it all down, there are only two ways this can play out.
Scenario A, the most likely one, is a controlled sacrifice. A few of the top economic guys get fired, the cabinet gets shuffled, and the story changes for a little while. Scenario B is riskier. The whole government gets sent home. But look closely. What's the one thing that's the same in both scenarios? The real power structure behind the scenes? It doesn't change one bit.
And this brings us to the most powerful, most important idea in this whole analysis. This endless cycle of crisis and blame. It's not happening because of bad spreadsheets or poor planning. It's happening because the system itself is designed to work this way. This isn't an economic problem. It's an incentive problem.
And why is that? Well, it's because the very people who have the power to make real, tough, painful reforms are totally insulated from the consequences of not making them. The pain is never shared equally. The wealthy people who should be taxed are seen as untouchable. And here's the real kicker. Real, broad-based economic growth that helps everyone, that might actually threaten the people in control. So there's literally no incentive to fix the real problem.
And so we land on this final, powerful verdict. As long as all the real power is concentrated at the very top, the blame for any failure will always get pushed down. The system will sacrifice individuals, ministers, advisors, even prime ministers, but it will always protect itself. And that leaves us with a really tough question, doesn't it? Can a system that's incapable of ever holding itself accountable ever truly be fixed?